1945. The mushroom cloud over Hiroshima after the detonation of Little Boy on 6 August 1945. A separation between the upper mushroom head and the stem is visible. This photograph and its vaguely question mark appearance was used as the inspiration for the insignia of the Manhattan Engineer District, and was widely reprinted globally within days of the attack. The bomb was dropped at approximately 8:15 JST on 6 August 1945. After falling for 44.4 seconds, the time and barometric trigger started the firing mechanism. The detonation happened at an altitude of 1,968 plus or minus 50 feet, 600 plus or minus 15 m. It was less powerful than the Fat Man, which was dropped on Nagasaki, but the damage and the number of victims at Hiroshima were much higher, as Hiroshima was on flat terrain, while the hypocenter of Nagasaki lay in a small valley. According to figures published in 1945, 66,000 people were killed as a direct result of the Hiroshima blast, and 69,000 were injured to varying degrees. 36. NATO estimates put the deaths as high as 140,000 people. 37. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey estimated that out of 24,158 Imperial Japanese Army soldiers in Hiroshima at the time of the bombing, 6,789 were killed or missing as a result of the bombing. 38. The exact measurement of the explosive yield of the bomb was problematic since the weapon had never been tested. President Harry S. Truman officially announced that the yield was 20 kilotons of TNT, 84 TJ. This was based on Parsons's visual assessment that the blast was greater than what he had seen at the Trinity nuclear test. Since that had been estimated at 18 kilotons of TNT, 75 TJ, speechwriters rounded up to 20 kilotons. Further discussion was then suppressed, for fear of lessening the impact of the bomb on the Japanese. Data had been collected by Luis Alvarez, Harold Agnew and Lawrence H. Johnston on the instrument plane, the Great Artiste, but this was not used to calculate the yield at the time. 39. More rigorous estimates of the bomb yield and conventional bomb equivalent were made when more data was acquired following the end of the war. A 1985 study estimated the bomb's yield was around 15 kilotons of TNT, 63 TJ. 40. Physical effects. After being selected in April 1945, Hiroshima was spared conventional bombing to serve as a pristine target, where effects of a nuclear bomb on an undamaged city could be observed. 41. While damage could be studied later, the energy yield of the untested Little Boy design could be determined only at the moment of detonation, using instruments dropped by parachute from a plane flying in formation with the one that dropped the bomb. Radio transmitted data from these instruments indicated a yield of about 15 kilotons. 40. The general effects of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A U.S. Air Force film comparing this yield to the observed damage produced a rule of thumb called the 5 pounds per square inch, 34 kPa, lethal area rule. Approximately all the people inside the area where the shock wave carried such an overpressure or greater would be killed. 42. At Hiroshima, that area was 3.5 kilometers, 2.2 mi, in diameter. 43. The damage came from three main effects: blast, fire, and radiation. 44. Blast. The blast from a nuclear bomb is the result of X-ray heated air, the fireball, sending a shock wave or pressure wave in all directions, initially at a velocity greater than the speed of sound. 45. Analogous to thunder generated by lightning. Knowledge about urban blast destruction is based largely on studies of Little Boy at Hiroshima. Nagasaki buildings suffered similar damage at similar distances, but the Nagasaki bomb detonated 3.2 kilometers, 2.0 mi, from the city center over hilly terrain that was partially bare of buildings. 46. Frame house in 1953 nuclear test. 5 psi overpressure in Hiroshima. Almost everything within 1.6 kilometers, 1.0 mi, of the point directly under the explosion was completely destroyed, except for about 50 heavily reinforced, earthquake-resistant concrete buildings, only the shells of which remained standing. Most were completely gutted, with their windows, doors, sashes, and frames ripped out. 47. The perimeter of severe blast damage approximately followed the 5 pounds per square inch, 34 kpa, contour at 1.8 kilometers, 1.1 mi. Later test explosions of nuclear weapons with houses and other test structures nearby confirmed the 5 psi overpressure threshold. Ordinary buildings experiencing it were crushed, toppled, or gutted by force of air pressure. The picture at right shows the effects of a nuclear bomb-generated 5 psi pressure wave on a test structure in Nevada in 1953. 48. A major effect of this kind of structural damage was that it created fuel for fires that were started simultaneously throughout the severe destruction region. Fire. The first effect of the explosion was blinding light, accompanied by radiant heat from the fireball. The Hiroshima fireball was 370 meters, 1,200 feet, in diameter, with a surface temperature of 6,000 degrees Celsius, 10,830 degrees Fahrenheit, about the same temperature as at the surface of the sun. 49. Near ground zero, everything flammable burst into flame. One famous anonymous Hiroshima victim, sitting on stone steps 260 meters, 850 feet, from the hypocenter, left only a shadow, having absorbed the fireball heat that permanently bleached the surrounding stone. 50. Simultaneous fires were started throughout the blast-damaged area by fireball heat and by overturned stoves and furnaces, electrical shorts, etc. 20 minutes after the detonation, these fires had merged into a firestorm, pulling in surface air from all directions to feed an inferno which consumed everything flammable. 51. The Hiroshima firestorm was roughly 3.2 kilometers, 2.0 mi, in diameter, corresponding closely to the severe blast damage zone. See the USPS 52 map, right. Blast-damaged buildings provided fuel for the fire. Structural lumber and furniture were splintered and scattered about. Debris-choked roads obstructed firefighters. Broken gas pipes fueled the fire, and broken water pipes rendered hydrants useless. 51. At Nagasaki, the fires failed to merge a single firestorm, and the fire-damaged area was only 1/4 as great as at Hiroshima, due in part to a southwest wind that pushed the fires away from the city. 53. Hiroshima blast and fire damage. U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey map. As the map shows, the Hiroshima firestorm jumped natural fire breaks, river channels, as well as prepared fire breaks. The spread of fire stopped only when it reached the edge of the blast-damaged area, encountering less available fuel. 54. The Manhattan Project report on Hiroshima estimated 60% of immediate deaths were caused by fire, but with the caveat that many persons near the center of explosion suffered fatal injuries from more than one of the bomb effects. 55. Radiation. Local fallout is dust and ash from a bomb crater, contaminated with radioactive fission products. It falls to earth downwind of the crater and can produce, with radiation alone, a lethal area much larger than that from blast and fire. With an air burst, the fission products rise into the stratosphere where they dissipate and become part of the global environment. Because Little Boy was an air burst 580 meters, 1,900 feet, above the ground, there was no bomb crater and no local radioactive fallout. 56. However, a burst of intense neutron and gamma radiation came directly from the fission of the uranium. Its lethal radius was approximately 1.3 kilometers, 0.8 mi, 57, 58, covering about half of the firestorm area. An estimated 30% of immediate fatalities were people who received lethal doses of this direct radiation, but died in the firestorm before their radiation injuries would have become apparent. Over 6,000 people survived the blast and fire, but died of radiation injuries. 55. Among injured survivors, 30% had radiation injuries, 59, from which they recovered. Viewed with the lifelong increase in cancer risk. 60, 61. To date, no radiation-related evidence of heritable diseases has been observed among the survivors' children. 62, 63, 64. After the surrender of Japan was finalized, Manhattan Project scientists began to immediately survey the city of Hiroshima to better understand the damage, and to communicate with Japanese physicians about radiation effects in particular. The collaboration became the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission in 1946, a joint US-Japanese project to track radiation injuries among survivors. In 1975 its work was superseded by the Radiation Effects Research Foundation. 65. In 1962, scientists at Los Alamos created a mock-up of Little Boy known as Project Ishiban in order to answer some of the unanswered questions about the exact radiation output of the bomb, which would be useful for setting benchmarks for interpreting the relationship between radiation exposure and later health outcomes. But it failed to clear up all the issues. In 1982, Los Alamos created a replica Little Boy from the original drawings and specifications. This was then tested with enriched uranium but in a safe configuration that would not cause a nuclear explosion. A hydraulic lift was used to move the projectile, and experiments were run to assess neutron emission. 66. Conventional weapon equivalent. After hostilities ended, a survey team from the Manhattan Project that included William Penny, Robert Serber, and George T. Reynolds was sent to Hiroshima to evaluate the effects of the blast. From evaluating the effects on objects and structures, Penny concluded that the yield was 12 plus or minus 1 kilotons. 67. Later calculations based on shearing pointed to a yield of 13 to 14 kilotons. 68. In 1953, Frederick Reynolds calculated the yield as 15 kilotons of TNT, 63 TJ. 39. Based on the Project Ishiban data, and the pressure wave data from the Great Artiste, the yield was estimated in the 1960s at 16.6 plus or minus 0.3 kilotons. 69. A review conducted by a scientist at Los Alamos in 1985 concluded, on the basis of existing blast, thermal, and radiological data, and then current models of weapons effects, that the best estimate of the yield was 15 kilotons of TNT, 63 TJ, with an uncertainty of 20%, plus or minus 3 KT. By comparison, the best value for the Nagasaki bomb was evaluated as 21 kilotons of TNT, 88 TJ, with an uncertainty of 10%, plus or minus 2 KT, the difference in uncertainty owing to having better data on the latter. 40. Although Little Boy exploded with the energy equivalent of around 15 kilotons of TNT, in 1946 the Strategic Bombing Survey estimated that the same blast and fire effect could have been caused by 2.1 kilotons of conventional bombs, 220 B-29s carrying 1.2 kilotons of incendiary bombs, 400 tons of high-explosive bombs and 500 tons of anti-personnel fragmentation bombs. 70. Since the target was spread across a two-dimensional plane, The vertical component of a single spherical nuclear explosion was largely wasted. A cluster bomb pattern of smaller explosions would have been a more energy-efficient match to the target. 70. Post-war. One of 5 casings built for the Little Boy bomb used on Hiroshima on display at the Imperial War Museum in London during 2015. Graph of cumulative shipments of U-235 from the Y-12 electromagnetics enrichment plant at Oak Ridge to Los Alamos, 1944-1946. When the war